And we're back. Another edition, Stripe Show podcast. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Hope you're having a great week. Good conversation with Jason Gore yesterday on all things USGA. And it's good to see the United States Golf Association moving in the right direction again. I think they're starting to reestablish their identity, and Jason's doing a great job. Now, Thursday, it's instruction. And this is going to be a special one, folks, because the guy joining me here is coming to me from the Sunshine Coast in Australia. It's actually Thursday morning there, Wednesday evening where I'm at in Ponte Vedra. So, Grant, good morning to you. Grant Field, the coach, longtime coach to Cameron Smith. This is going to be a lot of fun here to get some insight because you know Cameron perhaps better than anybody. Thanks for joining me, man.
No worries. Not a problem, mate. Glad to be here.
Congratulations is in order to start with here, because I was reading that you are the 2022 PGA of Australian, 2021 PGA of Australia Teacher of the Year. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was announced 2 nights ago at Greg Norman Medal. So, very fortunate, very pleased to be this year's Coach of the Year. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Sunshine Coast in Australia, a place called Pelican Waters. Go follow Grant on Instagram. He works with a lot of good players. I follow your stuff, and you've been a coach to Cameron Smith, his coach, for a long time now. Cameron Smith, I've been talking about him a lot on the podcast. Ironically, he lives right now, Grant. He lives 3 miles from me here in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. So I'm gonna have to let him know I'm talking to your coach on the podcast. Now I got to get Cameron on the podcast and bring this full circle. But you know him so well. You've taught him since he was 10 years of age.
Yeah.
This has got to be pretty cool for you to sit back in Australia and watch this young man now climb all the way to number 10 in the world.
Oh, no question. I mean, I think, starting out as a 10-year-old, you're not ever looking or thinking that this is the journey that you're on. So I think, back then he was just a really little kid who, played some nice golf. And, we had him in a squad. I was one of the coaches of a Sunshine Coast squad. And fortunately, where he lives is in sort of North Brisbane, and that was in our zone. And he came to a junior development clinic that we had, and he was put into my group, and kind of the rest is history. So I'm glad he was in my group, and I'm glad that 18 years later we're still sitting here, and he's number 10 in the world. So
now that's amazing, because I have a lot of teachers who watch this podcast, and young teachers have been doing this a while, whatever, and you just think to yourself, you're in this clinic, juniors run around, and all of a sudden here comes this kid, walking across, and like, wow, that kid's got talent. I'm sure you looked at him like, he's different. He's got talent. And here you are now 12, 13 years or whatever later.
18 years, yeah.
And he's the number 10 player in the world. That's a cool story.
Yeah, it's insane. I think, like you never sort of dreaming like, there was never the goal of, well, when I say it's never the goal, it was, never a thought. And then probably when he got to about 14 or 15 was when I was really like, okay, I think this kid can be something pretty special. But even early on, I mean, he was good, and, we'd have, heaps of short game clinics and that, and he'd beat all the 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And it's like, okay, like he's a competitor, and, but you're still not, there's still a lot to happen between, then and where he is now. So, but yeah, I've loved every minute of it.
Has he always been like that world-class putter? Because when you watch Cameron Smith putt, I mean, there's you walk the range of the PGA Tour, and we could list off some names that are like, okay, you got to stop and watch that guy hit the golf ball, right? I mean, Bryson, you got to stop and watch him hit the driver. There's guys, Colin Morikawa, you got to stop and watch him hit his irons.
Yeah.
And then you walk to the putting green, and there's those guys that you have to stop and watch them roll the rock. Cameron Smith, you have to stop and watch him putt, because he is one of the best putters in the world. Has he always had that knack?
Yeah, he's always been pretty good. I mean, I think, one of the beauties that happened with Cam is, he wasn't a big kid, and he didn't hit it a long way. And, he had to compete. He had to have a short game, and he had to learn to putt. And the beauty was, under pressure, he learnt to hold putts when it mattered really early on, and I think just that inner competitor was evident then, and that's just kept flowing through. And obviously, he's got really good fundamentals and all the rest of it, but that innate ability just to compete. So the tougher it got, I think the better he gets with the putter, and that's a unique skill, that a lot don't have.
Have you talked to him since the win at Sentry?
Only by text. So
only by text.
Just hungover. So they played a 9-hole practice round this morning, and then he was done. So more important to rest up rather than for us to. I mean, we'd planned to do a little bit this morning, but just tired and just needs a break. So his game's obviously in a really good position. It's just getting his brain back ready to play again tomorrow, and I'm sure he'll be fine to go. I
mean, it's got to be exhausting when you have the lead 4 straight days like he did. And he's staring down the number 1 player in the world in the same group for 3 days, who really, I mean, let's face it, he made one mistake. Jon Rahm made one mistake in that tournament on 5 on Saturday. He hit it he hit it in the long stuff, and he still shot the course record.
Yeah.
So Cameron's knowing that, man, I can't make mistakes. Like, I have to keep going in this pressure, and then I got to sleep on the lead, and I got to get up and do it again and stare Jon Rahm in the face, and then I got to sleep, and I got to get up and do it again. I mean, he's, he seems like a very confident individual to me, but he's got to come out of there going, okay, I am a top 10 player. I can go toe to toe with Rahm. You get that sense through text a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I've known this for a long, long time. And, I mean, I guess for him to get to top 10 in the world, you've got to play like probably a top 5 player in the world for quite a while. And, I mean, I know they were both teams events, but both of his Zurich Classic wins didn't count for any world ranking points. So, to climb his way to where he has without those extra points, just shows where he is actually, in the world of golf, I think, and I think for the last, good year, he's been definitely one of the best players on the planet.
Yeah, you look at his last 8 tournaments, his really only, I'll just call it bad finish, was 34th at the BMW. That's not like bad.
Yeah, but that was the week after, obviously, the Northern Trust, and again, another where it takes it out of you. And
I was just going to say, he finished 2nd there. I mean, he's 5th at St. Jude. He's 14th at the Tour Championship, 9th at CJ, 15th at Houston, 4th at the RSM, 1st at the Sentry. This is pretty heady golf since the 1st of August.
And I think, one of the things that probably doesn't get noticed, the 15th at Houston, for me, was probably, one of the most important weeks. Coming into the second last hole, he made double bogey and looked like missing the cut in Houston. And then he basically got up and down from about, I think it was 80 to 100 for double on 17. And then he birdied 18, played the weekend, played really nice, ran 4th the next week, goes into the holidays with a break, and then comes out fresh and wins at the start of the year. And I think, too often we sort of look at the shiny stuff, which is, the winning on the weekend. But, I go back to something like that, and, the guts that it took when you look like missing the cut to then, make the cut, then have a good weekend and run 15th, has been hugely important in this last little bit as well.
Is it fair to say with Cameron, I know he's won a couple times in Australia, and as he comes over to the States, is it fair to say that Cameron maybe is kind of, as we watch him now, he's kind of a late bloomer in some regards, right? Like he's gotten onto the PGA Tour. When he first got onto the tour, Grant, I mean, his short game, obviously his putting is great, but he wasn't like this top shelf iron player when he first got on tour. It seems like to me over the last 2 or 3 years, like his iron game is just went to an entirely different level to me. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, I was always of the belief that what we were doing was going to be good enough. It was a work in progress. You know what I mean? Like I said, I think it wasn't that it wasn't at the level it needed to be world class then, but we were on our way there, rather than we needed to make wholesale changes for that to happen. He's physically, I mean, at 22, 23, he still looked like he was 15, 16, right? So, whereas now, physically he's better. He's done a great job of his body in the off season. He's moving better, he's stronger, and just that sort of physical maturity has come a little bit later. So, that's why I think we're seeing, his driving improve, his iron play's improved, and then you combine that with a world-class short game and putting. Now is, why we're seeing the fruits of that labor, so to speak.
Yeah, when his iron game started to excel, I was like, that's okay. Now you got to pay attention because, the tour, the way it's set up, I mean, the strokes gain approach, the iron game, as you know, when that starts to become top shelf and you can putt like Cam Smith, you've got someone who can do some damage at that point.
And the thing for us has always been, we're just trying to get better every year, right? Mm-hmm. And I think everybody's in a big hurry to get to the end. And we were always of the belief that we're on the right track. We've just got to spend more time doing it, and I think that's what we're starting to see. And I think, like last year, everybody sort of talks about how Cam didn't drive it that well, but he was tour average with a driver, and that was his worst stat. So, from there, I think you'll see this year he'll, definitely go into strokes gain positive, and then, he'll be strokes gain positive in every area, and then, slightly better, with the putter and the short stuff and with the iron play. So, I think, again, combined with where his confidence is at, we're in for a pretty good season.
Let's talk about some of this technique and this process. Before we get to that, it kind of reminds me, Jamie Mulligan works with Patrick Cantlay, and they've been together a long time too. And this whole
Jamie at the President's Cup in 2000.
Yeah, I've known Jamie for a long time, and I've been following Patrick and Jamie's relation. Your all relationship kind of feels the same. Like Patrick's 29, Cameron's 28, right? Yep. But you guys have been together, and it's like it just always feels like it's not a hurry. I think you said it perfect. There's not a hurry in this. Like we're just developing, and we're moving the right way. You're growing into your body. Kind of this holistic, be patient, let it mature. And is it a late bloomer? I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's just this process of not rushing it and getting burnt out and being so affected by the ups and downs of the game. And then all of a sudden you kind of fall into place and it's like, Patrick Cantlay's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah,
Cameron Smith's now in the top 10.
and they're not doing anything different than what they've done for years.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things in especially in modern sort of coaching, we're trying to find the key, or we're trying to find the new way of doing things. And, I think those guys that have just, stayed on track and haven't looked for new ways to, and again, look, if there was, in my opinion, if there was things he was doing where he wasn't improving, like if we were looking at going, okay, well, this is not getting better, then time to look for some new, some new ways of doing it. But, every year we were just chipping away at getting better. And that's where, like I said, he's been on tour now, 6 or 7 years. And, we're starting to see the fruits of that, like I said.
So the iron game, let's talk about some of the, I was reading some of the stuff that you were talking about and things that you were doing with them. And one of them was, you were talking about kind of this hand path and the lead arm relationship to the body. And you can see it with Cameron where he'll, it's almost a little bit like DJ where his hands will maybe kind of want to climb away from a little bit. Yeah. So you guys try to keep it more in. And then you were also talking about this orientation, like the right side, maybe a little higher than the left. Take us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So basically, like you said, I mean, one of his tendencies is for his arms to sort of get a little bit out and away from his body, and then he drops it a little bit more in, so that the arms sort of over travel and drop under, and then he sort of has to, side bend and then try and catch up. So, the bad ones would be, to the right, and then, the overdraw. So for Cam, when he does a better job of that first move and loading properly and getting the arms and the body a little bit more connected, and look, if you're looking at parallel to the ground, you'll see that the hand, the club heads sort of cover the hands from a down the line point of view. That's when he's in the right position. So he gets the right depth early enough, rather than getting out and not getting deep enough and then sort of losing it in behind him and then having to get out of the road. So, and I think, again, like I said, with the improvements to his physical ability, he's just done a better job. Like that's stuff that we've always worked on. Like it hasn't really changed. It's just, he's able to do a better job. And he's with the off season just focused more on it. obviously when you're during the season, like we're talking about it, but really, the time to actually work on it is hard. But as I said, that's it's always been, for a better term, our way of doing things. Like we've been really big on having a blueprint all along, and we sort of vary because we know it works, right? We've got to know what works and what doesn't. So the more that, like I always sort of think like, if we're in a bowling alley and we put the bumpers on these bumpers to try and keep him, in his alley, right? So, the more that we can stay on course, we know that we've got something that's pretty effective.
When his hands and arm when they go away, right? Or like out here too much.
Yep.
And then he turns. Does that tend to kind of lead him into that maybe flatter type of turn, or is that a separate deal? Okay.
No, absolutely, especially with the longer clubs.
Yeah.
He's always pretty good with the short stuff. He doesn't get that. I think, obviously the more that he's trying to create power, the more he wanted to get more of that. And then, like you said, it'd turn a little level. And then, to create a steep, he'd go this way to get, back and under it. So, he kind of had to do that. That wasn't a given. Like if he wanted to hit the ball, that's what he had to do. So, now that he can sort of, maintain that first move, like you said, stay in his tilts a little bit better, he can stay more on top of it.
Yeah.
He uses the ground better to push up and go around. So,
yes, that's good stuff. That's all connected here because we talk about this. And the one thing that just drives me nuts, Grant, is when I see, all that matters is impact. The backswings.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's funny when I get the best coaches in the world and we have a conversation, oftentimes we're talking about the backswing.
Look, very rarely, in my opinion, are we actually, for me, impact's a moment in time, right? So if you're moving properly, impact's a byproduct of the stuff that's come before it.
Yeah. Right.
And good players can make stuff work. And that's one of the issues sometimes is good players, they're just good.
Yeah.
Make things work. And, I sort of work on that, from start to impacts, barely a second, and if you're not in the right positions to deliver that, it's very, very difficult to get back to a good and repeatable impact position. So.
And Cam's such a good example of like the face. The face looks up a little towards the sky, maybe slightly closed. I'm barking on amateurs all the time about the importance of face angle. And I had a guy just today on the lesson team. We were talking about face angle. And we were talking about, I said, I can probably count on one hand how many have the face open at the top.
Yeah.
Like there's just not many. And there's some. There's not many. Yeah. And it's like, and the name that always comes to mind is Hudson Swafford, right? It's like that dude gets it open and then he just swivels it down, leans the shaft forward. And so that was brought up. Well, Hudson Swafford kind of, Georgia guy here in Florida, they just won the net. I'm like, look, you want to get the face open and you want to make that move coming down and you want to do that, and try to develop some shaft lean in the process of doing that, knock yourself out. Like that's just tough.
Over a second or something, like not easy.
Yeah. The backswing matters. I mean, it does. And like, I always use the idea of like, we're trying to improve the probability of impact here. We're trying to keep these bumpers where you can just be instinctive and hit it. And the backswing's like a huge part of that. And here's Cam Smith, number 10 player in the world, talking with his longtime coach. And it's like, we're just trying to get his left arm to be a little more here. We're trying to keep him on his orientation. And then from there, it's like, he can do all the rest of it a lot easier.
Go ahead and hit it. And even before that, I think how we start, just from a body position and a joint position, influence obviously how we move to start. So again, where I position my body is going to influence, like when we look at grips and things like that, how I set my body with angles, with, internally or externally rotate, all those things are going to influence that, which then influences how the club moves away, so they're all parts of the puzzle, so often I'm going back to, where it starts and how it moves to start. And generally speaking, those things are going to set somebody up to move properly on the way through.
Before we get to his driver, talk about how the long distance works between you two. Is he two things? One, is he sending you video, and is Cameron, is he a tech guy? Does he want to know numbers? Does he want to know 3D? Does he want
to? No. So, in a roundabout way, he just wants me to tell him what to do. So it's like he understands it. Like he understands what we've done. I mean, we've obviously done it for so long.
Yeah.
So many times he's like, I saw this and this. And I'm like, you're spot on. And that's the thing as a coach, right? Is I want them to not have to rely on me.
Right.
If I do my job properly, they know what we're trying to do. Right now, that doesn't mean they need to understand everybody else's golf swing. They just need to understand what they do. And I think he's a good example of that. But he'll send me swings. So generally, like a tournament week, Sam, so his caddy, will send me some swings on Monday. We'll have a range session on Tuesday, and then just to check in, just to make sure we're on top of things. Like I said, we haven't done anything this week just because he's hardly, he went to the range yesterday for 15 minutes and hit some, and and played 9 holes this morning in the Pro-Am. So just because his brain and his body's pretty fried. So the most important thing for him is rest. But normally we would do that session, and then during the week, if we need more contact, we will. I always sort of make myself available. I'm always trying to make sure that post round, if he needs something, that I'm available then. But most of the time he's pretty good. He's pretty self-sufficient. He knows what he needs. My job these days is more as insurance, rather than making wholesale changes or trying to so I'm there when he needs me. But we try and do every week, just whether it's an hour, whether it's 15 minutes,
touch base,
whatever it needs, just to check in. If he's on the right path, just keep doing what you're doing. If it's, and I'm also mindful of, how he's feeling, as far as, the words that are coming out of his mouth. I know when to stay away. It's like last week, during the week, it's like, I don't need to be involved.
Yeah.
You just do your thing. I think sometimes coaching, is, and from a younger version of myself, you'd want to say more, but the reality is a lot of times you're actually better off saying nothing. So it's knowing when to talk and when not to talk. And I think unless I'm going to add value, for me, I'm trying to, basically stay out of the road.
Yeah. Say less, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think it's overdone out there. I don't know, just my feel, I'm not out there.
People are trying to value their position. Right. So this guy's paying me, I need to say more. Right. So in the world that they're in, the smallest influences, can have the biggest difference in outcome. So it's knowing when to speak and when not. I remember talking to Dennis McDade about this once with Mark Leishman. At the British Open, where Mark finished second, and he said, Mark was playing nice, and the first 3 days I've said nothing. We're just walking, and then one of the days on the course, he said, every time I noticed there was a little bit of wind into off the left, he just looked like he wanted to go a little harder at it. And he said, all I said to him was, mate, whenever you got that wind into off the left, just swing a little bit easier. Right? He said that was my input for the week. But at the end of the week, Mark runs second. And he said, every time I had that shot, I was just mindful of, it was like this year at the Masters. I sent the guys some stuff about just some tee shot angles, where Cam was in the tee block, so because obviously I got to see every shot, so, and, from round to one, he was on 2 and 9, and he bogeyed. I think he might have made par and then doubled 9, and then the next day he birdied 2 and then parred 9. So he was 3 shots better just by, changing his tee shot angle, changing where he set up, the type of shape that he tried to play. So a lot of it, isn't, technical, but it's just, if you can have an input that makes a difference, that's what you're trying to do.
So let's talk about this for a second. I think that the biggest thing, when I look back and I watched a lot of the golf at Sentry, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, and I know that he's a good driver of the ball, but Jon Rahm is a great driver of the ball, right? I mean, he's the best driver in the world. Yeah. If you'd have told me that Cam Smith would have outperformed him with the driver for 4 straight days. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I know that he's capable of it, but it's Jon Rahm. I mean, this dude hits it 315 down the middle every time. Cameron Smith, to me, that was his best driving week I think I've ever seen. Statistically, pretty close.
He led driving for the week. He led driving and led putting for the week. So,
is he hitting it longer, or is it just me?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
A little bit. And again, like I said, we haven't done anything majorly technical to change that. Physically, he's lost a little bit of weight this year. He's stronger. He's moving better. under load. And I think, because he's moving better, he's using his body better, he's using the ground better. And the payoff of that is just, I think 2-3 miles an hour of club head speed.
That was 4 or 5 in Hawaii.
Yeah, but with control, right?
Right.
The other thing. So, it's not just a matter, and I think that's where people get stuck. Everybody's wanting to hit it further and hit it harder. But, if your body's not designed to do that, it's going to be a crash course in playing out of the rough. So I think, one of the biggest things is his body's enabling him to go faster. And then because he's moving slightly better as well, you combine those two, we saw what we saw on the weekend, so, because the thing is, it's fine to hit it further, but he had control, like he hit a couple of average shots, but other than that, for the week, he hardly missed.
I thought he clipped the pass Rom a couple times too.
A lot of times, like he was, and it's hard to tell around there because obviously, if you use the slopes properly and maybe a different ball flight and a bit different run out, but and even Pinner and I talked about this yesterday. Like he was 20 past him a lot.
There was a couple times, I can remember a couple times the ball. They would show the balls in the fairway, and I'm looking and then all of a sudden, so John's hitting. I'm like, well, did Cam hit? No, Cam hasn't hit yet. Like, wait a minute. Okay, he's up. He's passed him again.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it was a combination of using the slopes better and a little bit of difference in flight maybe, but it's pretty impressive.
It was. Yeah, I mean, I thought he was longer. Zach had and to me, it was like that. If Cameron Smith hits his driver or anything like that, I mean, forget it. The way his iron game is there and putting, he's going to win
a lot.
He's going to be on the first page a ton. Yeah. Let me ask you this before I let you go. So his driver, give us one or two things that when you're watching him hit his driver, if this and this is good, or it's just this. What is it that when you're watching him that it's like when these things are in line and good, the drivers, it's pretty darn solid.
So again, going back to that first move, who's properly there and loads it properly. And the second thing you'll see with Cam, and saw it on the weekend, he looks really balanced. So again, whereas a lot of times when we got the other stuff, you'd see him sort of rotate through and then sort of almost fall back out of it a little bit. So again, controlling that first move a little bit better, getting the sort of right amount of, like I said, depth relative to his rotation on the way back. So then from there, he doesn't lose this, so again, he can sort of make that move and he can really use the ground to push up out of. So, and like I said, you'll see it just looks really balanced.
Yeah. I think he mentioned, or you mentioned something that, and I like what you said, like, okay, I'm blending my arm depth with my turn. Yeah. Right. And when he does that, it looks like it tightens him up a little bit. Like he doesn't get the runoff as much. And
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because like I said, when those arms get away and then, his arms travel too far relative to that, rotation, and then that's when he pulls down a bit and then has to back out. Right. So like you said, the arms and body match, he controls that top of backswing and he can maintain that width on the way down and really unload that club properly.
Can he quantify when the left shoulder is like more down in transition versus maybe wanting to pop up out of it?
He feels,
he can feel it.
So he knows like if it's going that way, that.
Okay. But it's funny. His checklist is not that. It's to make sure that, okay, I got to get this right. Then I can go.
Yeah. And exactly right. When he loads it properly, that creates that movement. So whereas the other one's a response to how do I get this back to the ball? I've got to steepen the shoulders, I've got to side bend, and then that gives what feels like room. Problem is now the club's traveling too far right, and he's blocking it or hooking it.
Yeah, and I think we talk about that a lot here is when you're falling back and side bend. I mean, you can have a little bit. I mean, it's not going to kill you, but when if it gets too much, you can't rotate. So now all of a sudden everything's running away, and that's for a better player. They get the block.
Well, again, just like you said, even before that, just how we use the ground to push out of, like if we're going this way too early, like you said, you can't push out of the ground, which means you can't rotate. So, which makes it, usually a little bit more of this to square it up. So, I mean, they're no different to every player out there. They all have their stuff. They all have their things that, we're trying to manage, and, at times they get away from us. But, I thought last week, not only, I mean, obviously the score represents he did a good job, but he looked really good from my point of view. And I said to him a few weeks ago just how good his body looked and was moving. And, for me, that's, like I said, that's a massive part of it, that he's, Cam's always trained, but kind of, has fallen off the wagon a few times, and it hasn't been, I guess, as consistent as we'd like it, And one of Cam's things is when he's working consistently, man, he's really good.
I had to laugh at his quote. They asked him in the press room, they said, your driver, it was amazing this week. What's changed? And he kind of talked a little bit about some of this. And he's like, honestly too, he goes, I used to just warm up. I used to practice, hit my wedge, my 7 and this and that. I get to my driver and go home. Now I'm staying another 20 minutes and hit my driver.
Well, and the thing is, he's the sort of guy that would hit 3 good drives and go, righto, let's go.
Let's go.
And you're like, we need a couple more than that. And look, Cam's really in tune. He comes across really, laid back, and which he is, but he's also very aware of, okay, I want to get better at this. I need to do the work, and one of the beauties with Cam, and he said it himself, maybe he gets a little lazy at times. I wouldn't say lazy. It's probably a little bit more complacent, but when he's there, his intent is as good as anybody's. So he doesn't waste energy being at the golf course, at the range, if he's there, he's working. If he's not, he's going home and, either fishing or just hanging out. So,
yeah, he likes that fishing here at the Intercoastal here in the Reds running. And
I think, having that, I think too many guys spend too much time, worrying about what's going to happen. Whereas Cam's always been great at, once golf's done, there's another life out there for me.
What a start to the year. This is, I imagine you guys are like, hey, great win. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep plugging along. And
the thing is, we're just, it sounds cliche, but we're just trying to always get better.
Yeah.
So, and I think, obviously the end that he's at now is quite pointy. So there are always little things that, and again, I think just being out there longer, he's understanding, he knows the golf courses better. So doesn't need to do as much pre-tournament as maybe what he used to. And, he knows himself better. He knows his body better, all those things combined, I think add to the pieces of the puzzle well.
Well, he knows the Wildlife Country Club well, where the Sony Open is. He won that back in 2020. He said it reminds him where he grew up in Australia there, Brisbane, kind of the same type of feel, and he feels very comfortable. So hopefully he's getting some rest, and he'll come out. And
he's, so, I think, once it's go down, his game's in, obviously in a great spot. So it's just of, being ready to go mentally. And then I think, like I said, not doing a lot this early part of the week, will really help him come the weekend. And again, you saw it last week, just physically how much better he is, how much that helped around such a hilly golf course. I saw him walking up one of the hills in the last round, and just the, how fast he was walking up, and just the quality of, athletically how he was going up the hill. I was like,
you can just see it. Yeah.
Yeah,
you could just see it probably in his gait and the way he was walking. Okay, this is what we need to be doing.
He wasn't struggling, put it that way. Physically he was powering up that hill, and that's a good sign.
That place is brutal to walk. Woo. Brutal. Grant Field, PGA Australia Teacher of the Year back in 2021. Longtime coach Cameron Smith. Thank you for coming on the podcast. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. I really enjoyed it.